come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
All out of bubblegum indeed. Good morning, everyone. How the devil are you doing this Friday? It's Friday. Got that Friday feeling? Yeah, me too. And the sun's shining as well. Can't be all bad. Let's have a look. Yes, Steve Williamson says they've broken ground over at in Texas for a new JCB factory. They did indeed. Yeah, I was going to feature it. And I mean this in the nicest possible way. Did you see the photograph of Lord Bamford actually doing the groundbreaking with, I think it was his daughter? He didn't look particularly well, I thought. Hope that's not anything to worry about, but yeah, I'm just saying. Andy Hare, good morrow to all. 'Tis Friday. Huzzah. Yes, 'tis Friday. I have to say, quite pleased about it. I realised I've only done a 3-day week because I was over in the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic, it was a very late finish on the Sunday night, well, actually Monday morning, early hours of Monday morning, and then early starts the following 2 days as well. So, yeah, feeling it a bit now. So glad it is almost the weekend. Rattle through. I want you to act as my moral compass in a moment, but we'll get to that in just a second. So first of all, good morning to Steve Williamson. Good morning to Peter McKenna. Good morning to Gary Muirhead. Good morning to Ken Hatcher, and to Andy Hare as well, obviously. Yes, good morning, one and all. So I said I wanted you to act as my moral compass. I think we all know each other well enough, so I'd like you to be honest with me right now. I'm about to tell you a couple of stories, and I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong, to be dismayed and even a little bit disturbed. So, story number 1. The World Demolition Awards have announced details of their speaker lineup for their event later this year. I think it's in November. And that lineup includes a keynote speaker. And that keynote speaker is the head of the company that was working at the Didcot power station when 4 men were killed in a boiler house collapse. Now, as you all know, that accident is still under investigation, so as it stands today, there is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that the demolition company involved was responsible or negligent. Just going to make that very clear. But given the fact that the incident remains under investigation more than 8 years later, do you think it's appropriate for the head of that company to accept an invitation to be a keynote speaker? That's story number 1. Story number 2. Construction News, meanwhile, has announced the shortlist for its Health, Safety and Wellbeing Award. And that list contains the name of a demolition contractor that was working on a site in Redcar more than 4 years ago where there was a double fatality. Again, there has been no conclusion, so as it stands today, no suggestion that this contractor was negligent or responsible. But do you think it's appropriate for them to be up for an award while an investigation remains ongoing? And finally, story number 3. At the same Construction News Awards, there is a category for demolition and enabling specialists. That shortlist comprises 6 companies. 3 of those companies, half the list, were named in the CMA scandal just over a year ago. So my question again is this. Should those companies be entering awards having brought the industry into disrepute in such a public fashion? Should the event organisers be accepting entries from companies involved in such behaviour? Am I just being a cynical old sod? Every likelihood of that. Is it time to let bygones be bygones? And just on the business of letting bygones be bygones, and I realise we're talking about 2 very, very different things here. There was a bit of discussion. I can't even remember which TV news channel I was watching. Maybe in Sky late last night. They were talking about obviously the D-Day commemoration yesterday and what have you. And somebody suggested, it's 80 years on. There are very, very few of the veterans left. Should we now be moving on? No. No, quite simply, we should not. Because as in actual fact, one of the guys on Sky actually said, given all that's going on, Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, all that's going on, now is the perfect time, I believe, to be discussing these sort of things. And as I say, I realise I'm comparing apples with oranges here, but surely if we want to have an accident-free, corruption-free industry, we should not be forgetting what has happened in the very recent past. Didcot was eight and a bit years ago. Redcar was 4 years ago, so it's still fairly recent. Should we be forgetting that? And it looks like I'm not alone in this. Ken Hatcher says no, and he says no again, and he says no again. So I think we're in agreement, Ken, on all three instances. No, think of the money spent on these awards and bonuses, etc. They can't, but they can't pay out a penny. Yeah, interesting. And no again. Peter McKenna says I'm not even sure how many zeros are there. I'm about 1,000% right. Questions 1, 2, and 3. None of these companies should be putting themselves out there whilst there remain live investigations. It's morally bankrupt thing to do. However, it's a big fucking club they pay into. Money talks and backhanders all still work. Sadly, Andy, you're absolutely on the money. Gary Muirhead says, definitely not to all your questions. The NFTC doesn't have a concession, and it seems to be the old boys club. Interesting. I did wonder that if it was just me being a bit of a pedant. Turns out it's not. This is sad news. Chris Ford says, good morning, good people. Sad news. Jim Balls, the founder of JC Balls, has passed on peacefully, surrounded by his family. That is very, very sad news indeed. Obviously, a very big deal up in, Chris Ford's part of the world, up in sort of Staffordshire or thereabouts, JC Balls, which kind of shares its initials with a certain company not too far away from it. Yeah, JC Balls. And Jim Balls has sadly passed away. That is terrible news. Obviously, thoughts are with his family and all his colleagues as well. I'm sure they will be feeling that today. Steve says, to be honest, I try not to watch the news. I've enough of my own personal life to worry about the shit in the world. Yes, it's shit, but can't do anything about it. I'd rather not know. Funnily enough, my oldest daughter, takes precisely the same approach. Doesn't watch the news, doesn't read a newspaper, just has decided the world could. And let's be absolutely honest. You know, for all of the D-Day, for all of the protests about Gaza and Israel and Ukraine and Russia and everywhere else, do we as private individuals make any difference whatsoever? I don't believe we do. Bearing in mind when Tony Blair decided that there most definitely was weapons of mass destruction lurking over in the Middle East. He decided to take us to war. 1 million people took to the streets of London and said, not on our watch. He did it anyway. Made no difference whatsoever. So there we are. Dan Kahn says, Andy, well said. The NFCC should be ashamed and should not exist. I'm not going to speak in defence of the NFTC. They're big enough and ugly enough to do that. I do believe the NFTC should exist, actually. I do believe it should exist. Not in its current format, not in the way it's run today. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And bearing in mind, all three of those things that we've just mentioned, the World Demolition Awards and the Construction News Awards, nothing to do with the NFTC at all. Now, the very fact that the NFTC took no action over the CMA investigation, that's a whole other matter. And for that, I most certainly do agree. But this is not an NFTC thing, although, they all of the companies we're talking about are NFTC members, and therefore, yes, I can see exactly where you're coming from. Incidentally, I had an approach yesterday, such as it was. Somebody contacted me on LinkedIn, claiming to be an accredited recruitment consultant. Accredited by the NFTC. I mean, I know the NFTC are in the accreditation business. I didn't realize they were accrediting recruitment consultants, but I had no interest. But if anybody spends any time on LinkedIn, why do all female recruitment consultants look like they may well have an OnlyFans page? Is that me? Am I getting a bit long in the tooth? Love to hear from you. Yes, I mean, in current format, need a full refreshing across the board. There is an issue. There is an issue with, and this is not, I don't think this is peculiar to the NFTC, but I think there is an issue with trade associations. And I've mentioned this before, and I'll do it very quickly again, because we do have a really good show for you today. I'm going to do this very, very quickly again. If you are the type of person that likes to sit on committees and what have you, and you decide that the NFTC is your way forward, here's how it goes, okay? So you apply, you are a member of, let's say, the Midlands and Welsh part of the NFTC. They have 5 regions, and that's one of them. So you apply to be a member. Now, if you are really committed, you might well be elected as vice chairman of that region for 2 years. If you are good, and if people support you, and assuming succession takes place, you will then become the chairman for another 2 years. Having done 2 years at regional, you could then become possibly the second vice president at national level. Assuming succession again, you could then do 2 years there, and then if all goes according to plan, you could then do 2 more years as vice president, and again succession kicks in, you could then do another 2 years as president. So your opinion, your biases, your prejudices and your preferences will have been influencing the direction of travel for the NFDC and quite possibly for the industry for 10 years. But you're not done. A lot of times, people that have done all of that journey then hop on over to either the National Demolition Training Group or the Institute of Demolition Engineers, or quite possibly both. And the same rules apply. You have vice chairmen and vice presidents and so on down the line. There is every possibility that if you do have specific ideals, agendas, prejudices, preferences, you could, from the very, very top, influence the direction of travel for the entire demolition industry of the UK for 20 years. Now, that's fantastic. If you are a real dynamic, quite possibly a bit younger, finger on the pulse, open-minded type of person, that would be a fantastic thing. If, however, you are set in your ways, bit old-fashioned, like your comfort zone, bit dictatorial, you could actually hold back the development of that industry for 2 whole decades. Not great, I don't think. Now, going back to the chat, Gary Muirhead says, even our very own Prime Minister has to apologise this morning for leaving early from D-Day celebrations yesterday. Yeah, it's shocking. There is nothing more you can say about Rishi Sunak. I mean, his days are quite clearly numbered. But when you just break that down to what he has actually done, he has left an important, and I do mean nationally important, internationally important, globally important event, marking the bravery and heroism of many, many fallen men, to try desperately to save his own job. That right there, that says an awful lot about a person, to my mind. Listen to a lot of the speeches now that Donald Trump is giving, rather than and I didn't believe a word of it, but rather than his old message of "Make America Great Again," he's now just a whining git. I've been treated unfairly by the judiciary. This is a witch hunt. Joe Biden's out to get me. He's using his friends in high places. Never mind all that, pal. What are you going to do for your country? That's what you're there to do. There you are. Let's have a look. Jim Turner says, sad news about Jim. I only met him a few times. Lovely fella. Good innings, though. Yes, indeed. Honestly, I can't believe you said that about LinkedIn. I was just a way to say, why are their profiles so stunning? You click on some recruitment crap. I think it's to attract people they accept and follow. It's pure crap. I'll come back to that. I did a job for it was a plumbing company, bizarrely. I did a job for a plumbing company, and it was a franchise. So they had lots and lots of individuals dotted around the country who would, they had to go through an exam to prove that they were a very, very good plumber, and then they could buy the franchise and stuff. I won't bore you with all that. But part of my job at the time when I was in PR and marketing and whatever was to reach out to local newspapers to organise the advertising for all these individual plumbers. Anyway, I spoke to a local newspaper down in Essex and tried to do all the negotiations over the phone. But the guy I was speaking to said, well, next time you're down here, why don't you pop by? We'll buy you a cup of coffee, we'll have a long chat and see if we can do more for you. So, absolutely fine. A couple of days later, I'm heading for Essex. I called into the office. So I'm sat there in reception, and they sent a girl down to see me. Girl that came down, and this is, I'm a happily married man, but, you can still look. This vision walked out of the elevator. Her skirt was basically a belt, and she was wearing a blouse that looked like she'd borrowed it from her teenage sister. It barely buttoned up. It was barely buttoned up. Okay, so being a bloke, wow, look at that. Anyway, she then takes me upstairs to the recruitment department. There's about 30 women working in the department, and they all look exactly the same. All of them. Tight shirts, mini skirts, makeup, big blonde hair. That's not a coincidence, people. I realise the people that are being had here are us, the blokes, because we are stupid. And we do wake up each morning and decide which direction of travel we're going to take, depending on which direction our respective penises are pointing. But is that business? And I realise I'm going to sound really prudy and old-fashioned here. Should the NFDC be endorsing the accreditation, whatever it is, of somebody that is using that approach? If an equipment manufacturer said to me, "We'd like to advertise with you," I'd rub my hands together and think, "Happy days! There's some more money coming through the door." But if they sent me through the advert and it was some dolly bird with a bikini on, I'd send it back. I wouldn't run it. Not because I'm prudish, but because surely we're past that now. Are we not? Let's have a look. Mark Whiting's here. Good morning, Mark. Reason that, Mark, is because these women showing their face on profile get more attention when jobs are posted, I believe, and more men communicate with them. Yeah. And what I find really bizarre, and I do, there's a bit of me that wants to start each and every one of these episodes with a message of, hello, ladies of the industry and ladies of the world generally. Sorry. Men, by and large, are arseholes. I really am tempted, because when you see some of these, and I'm talking about recruitment consultants on LinkedIn here, but I would say exactly the same thing about influencers on social media of the female persuasion. You look at them and they're doing their thing, whatever it might be, dancing in front of a digger or whatever it might be, and the comments have got nothing whatsoever to do with the digger that they're talking about. What's the point of that? And bearing in mind, these are public things. You've got people that they are posting on behalf. Well, they're posting personally, but they're also got their name and their job title and the company they work for, and they're admiring the dolly bird doing recruitment on LinkedIn. Is that not a bit cringy? Gary Muirhead says, "What have you got to do to be removed from the NFDC membership? These companies seem to be untouchable." I honestly don't know. I don't know. Bearing in mind, we're not the two companies I mentioned. We all know who they are. Didcot and Redcar. They have not been found guilty, but others have been found guilty of negligence or whatever it might be. They have been fined and prosecuted over accidents and fatalities. They are not removed from the NFDC membership. However, if one of their auditors comes to your site and finds that your paperwork is not in order, you can have your membership suspended. How does that make any sense? It really doesn't. These politicians, says Dan Cullen, are like school children at the moment on a playground. We do this and that. Yeah, absolutely. I hate how some people use things like that for attention. Would I do it? If I look like Brad Pitt, would I play on it? You're damn right. Would I? I don't know. I'm bearing in mind it's an all-male industry. I'd probably get the wrong kind of attachment, wrong kind of attention, rather. But there's the thing. As I've said this before, one of my daughter's friends has got an OnlyFans page. I personally, I don't have a problem. That's what God gave her, and if she's making a few quid out of that, then it's no skin off my nose. I've never looked because she's my daughter's friend. I've never actually been on OnlyFans. I don't even know what it looks like. So I've got no issue with that. But where I do find an issue is where it's done in a business environment. It just seems weird. Mick Norton says, in your hypothetical hierarchy for the NFTC is correct. It doesn't say much for their membership moving forward. No, it doesn't. And you know how you get, I always fall back on football. So football is my go-to for analogies. You know, you've got a football team might be struggling. You know, they've I don't know, recently been relegated or narrowly escaped a relegation. So they go out and they find a new manager. And the new manager comes in with new ideas on training, on strategy, on nutrition and fitness and all of these things. And all of a sudden, that team that couldn't win an egg and spoon race suddenly start to win games, and they move up the table. If you are in that never-ending cycle of the same people being involved for 20-odd years at the top of the industry, that turnaround never happens. Now, and bearing in mind, and this is not the fault of the incumbent president by any means, but the membership of the NFTC today is at its lowest ebb in its entire history. It's got lots of what they call ISPs. They used to call them associate members. So lots of manufacturers and service providers, including Dolly Bird recruitment companies. But what they don't have is new demolition companies coming in. Could you change that with a change of direction, a change of strategy? I think you probably could. It's physical attraction over profile pics. You're absolutely right. And China attachment companies with stunning women on their profile pictures. Yes, I get that a lot too. I really do get that a lot too. Jim Turner says, if Rishi really wanted to concentrate on looking good, he should have stayed over there and spent all his time with the remaining veterans, as there's so few left. That would have been morally and politically the right thing to do. Yeah. Now, I'm going to tread on some very, very thin ice now, but I do think this is a strange thing. I thought that King Charles gave a very good speech. I am erring towards the anti-royal, but I do think he gave a very good speech. I think he said all the right things, and it did seem to come from the right place. However, he was speaking to an audience of D-Day veterans, all of whom were sporting their medals, all of whom had lost friends and comrades and colleagues, both during and after the war and everything else. And King Charles turned up wearing medals. Is that right? I realise that the royal family has its links with the military, and I know they do service and stuff like that. But would you really want to be stood in front of a group of people that lost their friends and their comrades in battle wearing a row of medals on your chest? Have I just woken up feeling pedantic? I don't know. And then they call men pervs. It's unbelievable how these women dress to attract men to work for them. Yeah. Chris Ford says, bring back Boris. Well, I'm not sure about that. At least you knew where you were getting screwed. Personally, even if I vote, I like Monty Brewster's slogan, vote none of the above. Yeah, absolutely. What's the expression? Doesn't matter who you vote for, the government always get in. Steve says it's sickening. I don't agree with it at all. Neither do I. This is rife in the industry now. Tits and legs showing. Maybe it's because I'm knocking on a bit. Maybe it's because I've got daughters and a wife and stuff like that. But it just feels so out of step with the industry now, doesn't it? It really does. You know, on the one hand, I overhear, and let me be the absolute, I will start the show in a second. Over here, and I do know this is designed to be a distraction, but over here we've got women campaigning to get PPE that fits them, because PPE generally is square and man-shaped. So you've got women over here. You know, we have women in construction, you know, as a campaign and as a movement. We have all these campaigns going on to get more women in the industry. And over here, we've got tits and legs. I'm with this one. Let me just say I'm with this one. Let's have a look. 1,000 likes, 990 of them are, you look hot, be my wife, get a grip, man. Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember, and I don't even know if this still goes on, do you remember there used to be a thing that men used to do from construction sites? Attractive woman would walk past and they would wolf whistle. Never mastered the wolf whistle personally, but they would wolf whistle. And I remember thinking, whenever I encountered that, did they honestly expect a woman to stop in her tracks, look back and think, yes, there's the man of my dreams with his beer belly hanging over the front of his jeans and his arse hanging out the back? I must immediately go and meet him and marry him and settle down with him. Probably not. If you are a recruitment consultant or a social media influencer and you're dancing in front of your digger, or you've got the twins on display, do men really think if I say, oh, you look hot, they will immediately say, well, you'd best pop round then. I'm waiting for you. Really? Do they honestly think that? I mean, listen, I'm a bloke. I've never thought that. Looking at a nice bit of toffee is one thing, but money overrides everything else. Yes, it certainly does. I only watch this show because I'm bisexual. I always knew, Steve, there was something about you. Something about you. The Highland Show, I heard it's £65 to get in. That can't be right, surely. £65? Really? Listen, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Let's have a look. I promise I'll start the show in just a second. The only way to be removed from the NFTC is stop paying the subs. That's all. It's money all the way. Many moons ago, I used to pay for to be an ISP member. Waste of time. At the meetings, there were usually 6 of the same demolition companies present and 26 ISP members. Yeah, that's Morning L Fallon over on Instagram. Yeah, and how? I mean, I can't help but think that this is short-sighted on behalf of the ISP members. And I realise the idea of paying a subscription fee and then being able to rub shoulders with the great and the good of the industry, at regional meetings and at national meetings. I understand that. But you don't, because not all of the NFDC membership, the actual demolition contractors turn up. Those that are responsible for buying plant often aren't there. Because it's usually the principals that do show up. And Andy here is an example. Andy here, as you all know, sells attachments. If he goes to a meeting he's up in the northeast region, I would guess, or would have been back in the day. If he goes along, the chances are he will be one of half a dozen, 10 different attachments manufacturers, and sat in front of him is 5 demolition contractors. How does that? Why would you pay for access to that? I don't understand it. Business should be professional. I totally agree. Sex sells, says Chris Ford. Just imagine what it would be like if there wasn't any regulations. When did you ever see a fat bald bloke, or selling anything on TV apart from the Hamlet advert years back? Yeah. I really must start the show in a second. But the other one that really annoys me, and listen, I think you know by now, I am left-leaning liberal. I'd like to think I don't have a sexist or a racist bone in my body, but how many adverts now are tick the box? We've got an advert for a holiday company, so we need a mixed race family. Ideally, we'll have 2 women who are clearly in a relationship. We'll have 2 men who are clearly in a relationship. We'll have an Asian couple, we'll have a black couple, we'll have a white couple, we'll have someone in a wheelchair. Tick the box, tick the box, tick the box. And once you see it, it's like, well, I can't unsee that now. You've clearly gone to a media agency and said, we want a TV advert. Yes, but don't forget, you have to have somebody disabled, somebody gay, somebody black, somebody white, somebody Asian. The hell, that's not real life. TV, you really have to do it right or not at all. Social media will ruin you regardless who you are. If you don't, you're dead right. Mick Norton, have you ever thought about removing the demolition from your program title? Yes. I do come back to it on a regular basis, but I'm looking into sex change to get the followers. I think you'd make a handsome woman. Steve says Katie Callaghan and the JCB Digger Girl, the best examples in the UK of women in the industry. And what do they both have in common? They are themselves, and they've got all their clothes on. Weird that, right? Nothing wrong with Charles having his medals on. He's ex-forces. Yes, he's not been cannon fodder, but he has lost friends, family to hostility. Fair enough. I stand corrected on that one. Steve says, women's bras and knickers fall off if you give them a wolf whistle. Didn't you know that? See, I wouldn't know. Never mastered the wolf whistle. Never been able to try it, but I'll take your word for it. Good morning, all. I don't know about a lot about the demo industry, but the sound of it, rival federations required with strict rules on longevity of serving, set up on the basis of integrity. Yeah, there's a thought. If anybody would like to go and do that, let me know. Let's have a look. Steve, the phrasing I hate is when people say money isn't everything. It is. Where would we be without it? Quite right. A yogurt advert is more sexy than going into an Ann Summers. Funnily enough, we were talking about this when we were over with Bobcat, trying to explain the advertise. Well, we tried to explain how Marks and Spencer turns its business around with sexy food adverts. And I realised there were no semi-naked women and stuff. But do you remember? This isn't food. This is Marks and Spencer's food. You remember that? Very sexy, but not sexy in the truest sense of the word. Apparently, that was worldwide. The Spanish had seen that, the Poles had seen that, and the Czechs had seen it as well. Mick Norton says, as the head of state and commander-in-chief of our armed forces, King Charles has every right to wear honourable orders, gold and diamond, platinum jubilee medals, and the coronation medal. I met him way back when he was Prince of Wales. We were both in full regalia, sporting our medals. I was delighted and surprised he asked me about each of my medals and how they were awarded. As I say, I stand corrected. What? Haven't we started yet? Obviously, this is what people want. Give them more. Well, I'm still going to show you some diggers. All these agencies are employing people that have no idea of what's what. I had a lady call me asking what's the difference between a 360 and a 360 excavator and a 360 duck. A 360 duck lives in a pond, love. The digger girl, only in it for male attention, I see. I think she's in it for the money, to be perfectly honest. The male attention comes as a maybe a benefit, maybe not. Maybe it comes as a downside. This is the show, Mark. Nothing wrong at all with having the crap put in the world to rights. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for that excuse. Norwegian Earth Mover, my mate Martin, has just joined us as well over on Instagram. But despite all that you've just said, I am going to do the show now, so let's crack on. Even by our own tardy standards, today is a record. nearly 35 minutes before we even played the intro, and Steve is still loving the theme. Thank you very much indeed, Steve. It is Friday, the 7th of June. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, Bobcat and the future of operator safety. I think you're going to like this, and I think it's going to be a talking point. Volvo joins the Open S Alliance. We're heading for the mountains with VTN. That will make more sense when we get to it. And we're going back behind the scenes with Venieri. Plus, we're looking ahead to Hillhead 2024 with those fine folks at Hitachi. But before we get to all of that, there is the small matter of today's mystery machine. So... yes, mystery machine time. So let's have a look at what it is you have to work with. That's not the view you want. You want that one. There you are. That's what you've got to work with. I know what this is. I couldn't get it from that, but Can you? Can you identify what that is? Can you even identify what type of machine that is? Come back to the question of the day in just a moment. But that's the machine you need to identify. No prizes, but well, apart from the admiration and the admiration of your peers here on the Breakfast Show. Let me know if you have any thoughts on what that might be. While you're figuring that out, Dan Cullen's just gone for a Kubota 8-tonner. It is most definitely not one of those. I'm going to take that away. While you're figuring that out, let me remind you of today's question of the day. Yeah, our question of today comes once again from that bottomless pit of intrigue and curiosity, Mr. Gary Muirhead, our resident quizmaster. His question is this, very simply: what is your worst or funniest job interview experience? Now, as I say, this was Gary's question, but it does give me an opportunity to recount one of my own, which I'm delighted about. I applied for a job with a company where a friend of mine worked. I was 17, 18 at the time. I told her about the interview and who was interviewing me, and she said, she just literally sort of snickered to herself and went, "Look out for his eye." I asked her what she meant, but she giggled and just reminded me, look out for his eye. So, sure enough, I arrived for the interview, and there, sat opposite me, is a man with a glass eye. I couldn't take my eye off it. And I was absolutely sure that I was so distracted, I'd blown my job prospects. My friend, Mandy, asked me how the interview had gone. And I said, the interviewer rolled his eye at me, so I picked it up and rolled it back, which amused us both enormously. With hindsight, I can see that was probably in pretty poor taste. But however, I did still get the job. Although it was a few years down the line, it was that job that set me on the path to journalism. The rest, as they say, is history. Ancient history, to be perfectly honest. But yes, have you ever had an experience in a job interview? I don't suppose you've sat opposite somebody with a glass eye, but have you had a bad experience, a good experience, a weird experience? Love to hear from you. As I say, that is Gary Muirhead's question of the day. Let's go back to this. I know Dan said he reckoned it was a Kubota 8-tonner. It's not. It's not a Kobelco 4-tonner either. So let me just show you a smidgen more. There you are. I asked if you could even identify what type of machine it was. Martin up in Norway said wheelchair. No. One of these days I might actually feature something that has got nothing to do with this industry whatsoever. Just from my own amusement. But no, it is not a Kubota 8-tonner. It's not a Kobelco 4-tonner, and it is most definitely not a wheelchair. Keep the guesses coming in. Let me take that away because it is time to show you some good stuff immediately after this. Those that have an issue with AI, pay close attention because this is kind of erring towards AI. But in my opinion, this is positive AI. This is not AI that's looking to do you out of a job. This is AI that is aiming to send you home safely at night. So, as you know, earlier this week, I was over in Bobcat land, over in the Czech Republic. Met up with lots of the team over there, David and Lucas and Robert and a whole host of other people. But I also met up with Vijay Nerva, who has been on the show in the past. And he was telling me about a system they call operator presence. I'm not going to bore you with it because Vijay does a much better, has got a much better way of explaining it. So here's the video. I'd like to know whether you think this is a good idea. I'd love to know whether you would. It's not available yet, but if it was available tomorrow, would you want it in your cab? Have a look.
Yeah, so this is the operator presence technology here at Bobcat Company. We use a time-of-flight camera, which is basically a 3D camera, and we're able to determine if an operator is not in the correct operating position. So for this instance, it's hands on joystick. So if your hands are not on joystick when you're operating an excavator, and you take one hand off, you cannot operate the work groups anymore. It instantly cuts off because it thinks that you're not paying attention or it was an unintended operation. It's an option, we let the fleet owners decide whether they want this to be enabled for their operators. But we have a significant demand coming from different applications and different companies, and they see the need for this more and more as they see lesser trained operators or steeper learning curves for young operators. So I'm going to demonstrate. I have my hands on joystick. I'm going to put my seatbelt here. Normally, I should be able to operate, so it works normally. As soon as I take one hand off, my work group instantly shuts off. I might be distracted. I might take my phone. It's not going to work. It's not going to go anywhere but home. When I put my phone down, it allows me to operate again. Now let's talk about another use case. I'm a little distracted. I'm looking out. I'm looking outside the window. It doesn't see me in position. It cuts out the work group instantly. I come back. I hold my joysticks. When I want to operate, it lets me operate. We're not stopping people from doing work. We're just stopping people or we are enabling people to do work safely or more efficiently. Again, this is a concept. This is not going to production anytime soon. We're just trying to explore this technology better so we can make our job sites better, safer.
So I realise there is always a degree of Big Brother is watching with those sort of things, but Steve says, I like that. I like the one-hand disable rather. Saves putting the dead man up and down. Absolutely right. And I tried this, and it is literally, if you're holding the joysticks and you let go of one, that one doesn't work anymore. But literally, you go like that and you're working again. It's not, there's no switches to press. It's literally, it's on, it's off. It's on, it's off. Really is as simple as that. And it's all done by 3D cameras. The side conversation of that was that is basically just the tip of the iceberg of what that 3D camera can do. It would enable, the system exists. I mean, you've seen it on drones, and certainly there are cameras that allow you to do this. You could actually develop a system whereby you could operate by gesture. If you decided, emergency stop, that's it. Machine's dead. Temporarily. Stop. As simple as that. And, again, is that the dig motion? I honestly don't know. Is that the slew motion? I don't know. But again, all of that is possible. What do you think? Love to hear from you. While you're thinking about that, let me go back. Let's have a look. Dan is going for a Kubota mini shovel. It is not. It is not a mini, not a Kubota wheel loader. In fact, I'll give you a bit of a clue. It's not a Kubota at all. Let me throw it up on the screen and show you a smidgen more. There you are. Most definitely not Kubota coloured. See what you think? What's he got here? He's also gone for a mini skid steer. It's not a skid steer. So keep the guesses coming in. Bit of a difficult one today, but that was part of the plan. So while you're thinking about that, I'll take that away and I'll play a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
No, that's got to do with the question today, so I don't need to dwell on that at the moment. Yes, that was my trip this week over to Bobcat. The trip last week was over to Volvo. You've already seen the R60 truck. You've already seen the excavators. But there was something else lurking in the background, and that was the fact that Volvo has become the first OEM to sign up to the Open S Alliance, which, as you know, is the various most of the quick coupler companies coming together to standardize, to make life easier for customers, you guys. And yes, Volvo is now part of that. So this is the news.
My name is Mikael Ström, and I work here at the Volvo at the region Europe International as a product manager for attachments. Volvo is happy to be part of the OpenS Alliance, and we believe it's a good way forward for a standardized system of fully hydraulic quick couplers. The reason is that we see a need in the market when it becomes a bit more complicated with a lot of hydraulic attachments being connected directly to the quick coupler, that with a harmonized system and a system that is standardized, there is a possibility to connect a bigger range of attachments and not only be locked into one system. We want to have broad partnerships with different players, give a better possibility with a range of attachments to easily connect to our Volvo machines. The steel resist by history, a factory fit option, but we have partnered out also with SMP and Rototilt and Encon. We believe it's good to have partly a system that is harmonized and standardized so it's easy to connect to, but at the same time, as I mentioned with partnerships, we also have partners that are not included in openness, and that can also be a good partnership.
I think that's good news. Listen, anything that standardises and makes life easier for the customer, I'm all behind it. Gary Muirhead has said Volvo and Steel Wrists have always had a fantastic relationship. Obviously, both Swedish. There was a time I actually thought, I wonder if Volvo will actually reach out and buy Steel Wrists at some point. But then why would they? Because as that video actually evidenced, sometimes a customer may want something that isn't the Steel Wrist. They might want, a Rototilt or an Encon or whatever it might be. The option is there. Garvin, Mostly Diggers, has just joined us as well. Good morning. The guesses are still coming in. Let me take that one away. The guesses are still coming in on our mystery machine. What have we got here? Dan's going for the JCB 60 C-1. It's not. Steve punting a little bit. Is that a little shovel kind of thing? Nope. Is it a JCB 8014 CTS? It is not. Is it a JCB 36C-1? It's not. It's not a JCB at all. Here is a smidgen more. At least you probably now know what type of a machine you're talking about. I just need a make and a model. If the camera was a little wider, you could probably see it written on a piece of paper in front of me, but you can't. So you'll have to keep guessing, I'm afraid. While you're doing that, I'm going to take that away and I'm going to press this here button right here. I screwed up yesterday. I know what you're thinking. I screw up most days, but I did really screw up yesterday. I don't know how, but I had two videos here, both of which I was planning to play for you. One from Trevi Benny and the other from VTN. Somehow, I managed to describe one while playing the other. Thanks very much indeed to Andy Hare, who pointed out that I'm an idiot. Not that anybody needed to know that. So I am going to set the record straight. Yesterday's film was nothing to do with VTN whatsoever. I did it wrong. This one actually is about VTN, and I've checked, and it really is. So, VTN in the mountains. This looks lovely. Don't know whether it was just the lighting, but I really enjoyed that. As Steve Williamson has just said, sexy indeed. We've had a couple more guesses on our mystery machine, both of which, we've got a Steve Williamson is going for Komatsu PC20. It's not. A little Lugong, says Chris Ford. It is not one of those. Dan Cullen has gone for the Kato 2.7 ton. It is not. It is, there you are. Now, when I did this, that was the picture that I thought would give it away. Because for those in the know, that bit of cab is quite distinctive. If you know. If you don't, that won't help you at all. But that's where we are. If you've got any clues on that, we'd love to hear from you. Bit more to come. So let me roll a bit of this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Steve's just guessed that our little machine, our mini mystery machine, is a Sani. It is not. It is not. Now, I'm going to warn you in advance. There is a really, really, really bad pun coming very soon. I'm really pleased with it, but I know you're all going to cringe, okay? So, when we show you behind the scenes of these big excavator manufacturers, there are robots as far as the eye can see. Well, the film I'm about to show you is a bit different. As you're about to see, the machines from Venieri over in Italy are hand-built. They're hand-built. So, instead of robots, they have Robertos. I'm still proud of it. I don't care what you say. Have a look. say, as much as I like the idea of, I like seeing those highly advanced factories with all the whiz-bangery and the lasers and the robots and stuff. I love the idea of owning a machine that's been hand-built by artisans and technicians. Andy Hare, I'm looking at you, artisans and technicians. I'm going to bring up the mystery machine again. Had a couple of guesses at XCMG. It is not an XCMG at all. Dan Cullen is getting ready to travel home. And James White, I thought this was an interesting one. Along the same lines of the internal 3D camera, national highways are looking to require driver-facing cameras and AI cameras for external human form recognition and warning on all cabbed plant. It's coming, people. It's coming. And all it takes is for somebody like a national highways to actually implement that, and you just know that others will follow suit. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So saying all of that, I would say exactly the same thing at this point that I say in every time we discuss this. If you planned the job properly and you've kept machines, I need a full screen to demonstrate this. If you could keep machines there and men there, you wouldn't need cameras at all. Just a thought. That mystery machine, I can show you a little bit more because I do need to tell you that our final film is just over 2 minutes long, which means that's how long you've got to defeat the mystery machine. So that's what you've got to work with so far. I tell you what, let me give you two. There you are. That's what the bucket looks like, because we all know buckets are much like fingerprints. They are unique. That's not true at all. I made that up completely. That is a complete nonsense. It's a fiction. But there you are. That's what you've got to work with. You've got about 2.5 minutes in which to identify that. Otherwise, I go into the weekend with a victory under my belt, which is not a bad thing. So while you're thinking about that, let's think Hillhead. Right. So this is the comment I was expecting. And I'm on the fence with it. Dan Cullen says, going back to that 3D camera that we saw with VJ over at Bobcat, is that not invasion of privacy, internal camera? I don't have an answer to that. I have two. On the one hand, should you choose to take it that way, it is. But if that 3D camera is monitoring you and safeguarding you, is that not a small price to pay for an invasion of your privacy? I'm exactly the same on any form of monitoring. I don't care. I mean, if somebody wanted to install a Christ almighty, I'm looking at one. There's a camera right there. If somebody wanted to install a camera here to monitor my comings and goings, doing what I'm doing, knock yourselves out, because I don't do anything here that I'm got anything to hide. And yes, you might hear me fart, you might see me pick my nose or whatever it might be, but I've got nothing to be ashamed of. I don't have a problem with that being monitored at all. If it is for your safety and your well-being, should you have a problem with it? That would be my question. Now, I can tell you, Steve Williamson has taken a wild stab at New Holland. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Second, Jim Turner says, no invasion of privacy. If you took the job knowing about it, if you don't like it, don't take the job. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if somebody came along and said, you've been doing this job for 5 years and now we're going to install a camera, I think your immediate reaction would be, why? What do you think I'm doing? And I understand that. But if it was explained to me that it would, it was there for my own safety and everything else, I don't think I'd have a problem with it. Now, mystery machine, which, as we know, looks like this. Dan Cullen has gone for a Hannix 2-tonner. Oh, let me just say he's very much on the right path. He's gone with the Hannix NS15 1.5 ton. It's not. But boy, oh boy, are you close. Dan Cullen says, if it was explained, all okay. Yeah, as I say, I mean, it's the same as things like wearable devices. And I realise some people have an issue with wearable devices. let me tell you a very quick story. On the day after the Didcot disaster, Didcot occurred in the afternoon on the 23rd of February. On the morning, literally like 6 o'clock in the morning, I was at Didcot the following day with Sky TV and what have you. And when I arrived, they thought that 3 men were missing, but they didn't know. Those men had signed in, being right, this is a power station, it was very secure and there was lots of hoops to jump through. They had signed in, but there was no sign of them when the search was done and everything else, but there was no guarantees. Now, having been there, the town of Didcot is about a 5, maybe 10-minute walk away from where they were working. They could have popped into town to grab a sarnie or a can of drink or whatever it might be. There was a canteen on site, so I understand that that may have not been the case. Just up the road, even further up the road, there was a McDonald's. Did they pop up there to go and have a burger or something around about lunchtime? Is that why they were missing? If they had been wearing wearable devices, for one thing, everyone would have known precisely where they were, and that the three men that were presumed to be missing were in fact missing. And the other thing with that is they would have been found, rather than being found in 7 months, they could have been found in 5 minutes. Admittedly, there was wreckage to go through and everything else, but their location could have been identified immediately, all through the use of wearable devices. Diacon Demo, good morning, Frank, all the way from Australia. Let's have a look. Go back to the mystery machine. It is definitely not a Kubota. Is it a Hanix NR30? It is not. Is it a Hanix H22? It is not. Is it a Hanix N22B? It is not. Mick Norton, it's when Highways UK initiate disciplinary action against an employee as a result of face recognition cameras that the lawyers step in. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Now, I've said that you've got about 2 minutes. Let me just have a very quick look. I'll tell you exactly how long you've got. Our final film is 2 minutes and 25 seconds. It's coming. Demolition Engineer just joined us over on Instagram. Don't know who that is, but good morning to you. Yes, Hillhead 2024, barreling towards us right now like a runaway train. 3 weeks' time, the whole thing will be over and done with. So if you haven't registered, I would strongly suggest that you do so. I would imagine round about now, the organisers are currently pedalling like fury to ensure that the show is ready to receive the hordes of people that will pass through their gates. One of the key destinations at any Hillhead show is always the Hitachi stand. So ahead of this year's Hillhead, let's call by a Hitachi customer to see why he is such a fan of the brand.
We are Shannonside Civil Engineering, a Midlands-based groundworks contractor for the housing industry. We work for the major house builders in the UK on similar developments to this. We're starting now, a week ago, on the infrastructure where we're stripping the topsoil and starting drainage connections to enable the drainage of the whole development. On site today, we've got from 13 tonners the ZX130-6 up to the 350-7. That's our flagship machine. All of these machines are fitted with the Leica GPS system that we feel adds a real benefit in safety, first and foremost, keeping people away from deep excavations and the like, and then tracking our movements and excavations, depths of material used and so on. We have a team back in the office that log all that information and tie it in with our GPS models and drone surveys to give the best product we can to our clients. We've specified our latest machines with the Encon tilt rotator system. With the gripper, we find with the oil quick system, again, speed and versatility of it helps us speed up our operations and in some instances improves on safety again. For us, as we look to expand the company, there was only one option in my mind, and that was talking to Hitachi. After 25 years of operating them myself and supervising them for other companies, when I came to take the plunge myself, Hitachi was the first phone call. Our operators are all Hitachi men. They want Hitachi, and their machines are coming up to a year from replacement. The first question is, what model of Hitachi am I getting next? The reliability of the product is second to none in our eyes. All year round, we're running 100+ units with no breakdowns, minimal problems. Hitachi's backup is second to none. They're there on hand to help us with any issues we have. To keep our operators happy and retain staff, it's a no-brainer for us to give our operators what they want, and that ties in with my own philosophy, Hitachi number one.
Let me take that away just for a second. Oh, look, it's the 21st century, people. Doesn't it stand out? The way the machines looked, the process they'd gone through to purchase them, and the process they'd gone through to kit them out with the Leica and all the things. Just that's how it's supposed to be these days. Glad to hear another person seeing the benefits, says Steve Williamson. Let's have a look. Great company, says Dan Cullen. Great company. I worked with them years ago. Did you? Fantastic stuff. That one machine will do so much, says Steve. Mick Norton, the Hitachi takes some beating. It really does. It really does. It's been one of the premium excavator brands for a long while, and for very, very good reason. But never mind all of that. Mystery machine. I've won. I'm going into the weekend with a big win under my belt. We got close, Dan Cullen said, and Hanix N22B. It is not Hanix H75 or a Hanix H36C. It is none of those things. I can tell you right now. In fact, I can show you right now. Put it up on the stage. There you are. That right there is a Hanix H15B and -2. That's what that is. So, I win. This point in time where it's sad that there are no prizes up for grabs, because I'd quite like a prize on a Friday morning, but there is none. But I've won, just to make a nice change. But well done, everyone. You all got very, very close. I do love the process. I do love the process that you go through. Is it this? Is it that? Oh, we're on the. Oh, yeah. It's almost like an investigation. Do love it. Jim Turner says, I have very few complaints about Hitachi. I'm dogging one right now. Yeah, listen, I don't get. You go out and see people, and you get your gripes. You get your petty gripes about different machines and stuff. Don't get too many about Hitachi machines. They do the job. They do the job. I was close. H15, yeah, very close. And well done, says Dan. As a previous winner, I'll take that. I'll take that any day of the week. Thank you very much indeed. That pretty much does wrap up the show for this week. Well, today and for this week. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second. We've got. I'm going to go back over the question of the day. Do you remember that when that actually used to happen during the show rather than after? But yes, I'm going to go back over the question of the day. I'd also like to talk about female recruitment consultants, possibly, and how they dress. I'd also like to talk about the legitimacy of people entering awards when they've got something, a black mark against their name. But we'll come back to all of that in just a moment. So I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around, please stay safe. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. Monday, ideally. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back with the Craic immediately after this final word from our key show sponsor. I do want to, before I get into the chat and before I put the music on, I do want to say a very quick congratulations. We reported on the demise of Rye Demolition, which was headed up by a guy called Simon Barlow, who he's a smashing fella, and it really saddened me to see Rye Demolition go, because Simon is a smashing fella. Well, what do you know? He's back. He's back as demolition director at Demo Force Group. So congratulations. Welcome back, Simon. Back where you belong, in the demolition fold. Now, let me get some music on the go. What should we have today? Let's go for a bit of... What's that sound like? Oh, yeah, that'll do. Take it down a bit. Yeah, that'll do nicely. Right, let's go back to the top of the chat. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen was here at, what time was that? 4:51 a.m. Is this early enough, Mark? Hello for later on, watching Charlie Veach on YouTube. Why? Why aren't you asleep? I do want to make it clear. I do love the idea of you getting here early and the competition that's going on. You don't have to. There's nothing happening. I'm almost getting to the point of guilt that there is nothing happening at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not guilty enough to do anything about it, but I am starting to feel slightly guilty. But thank you very much indeed for being here. What we got here? So Steve Williamson joined us. Peter McKenna joined us. Gary Muirhead, our resident quizmaster, with a belter of a question today, if you don't mind me saying so. Ken Hatcher is here as well. Yes, that was the news yesterday. Didn't think it was worth featuring on the show, mainly because there was just a photograph. I think if they produce a video on it, I will share it. But yes, JCB has started work on a brand new American factory, 500 million quid's worth over in Texas to serve the American market. So good luck to them. Always nice to see the Brits expanding overseas. As I say, there's a photograph of Lord Bamford, and I only saw him, 6 months, 9 months ago. He may well have been on holiday and it's bleached his eyebrows, but all of a sudden it looked like he'd aged quite a bit. Hope he's okay. Is it Friday? Wouldn't have guessed, said Peter McKenna. Yes, it is. Very much indeed. So I told the three tales at the top of the show. So first of all, the keynote speaker of the World Demolition Awards is the head of the company that was present during the Didcot disaster. That investigation is ongoing 8 years later. Should he have been invited to be the keynote speaker was my question. Ken Hatcher very quickly said no. The second question was about the fact that the Construction News Awards, which I think I can't actually remember what month they're in, but it doesn't matter. But they've got a shortlist now for their Health, Safety and Wellbeing Award. And one of the companies on that list is the company that was on site when two men were killed, double fatality, up at Redcar more than 4 years ago. Again, no conclusion to that. That investigation also remains ongoing. So there is no proof in either the Didcot case or on the Redcar case that either company has been negligent or whether they were responsible in any way, shape or form. But given the fact that these is live investigations, should they really be up for a safety award? And then the final one was, again, the CN Awards. There is a category for demolition and enabling specialists. 3 of the 6 companies named on the shortlist were involved in the CMA scandal just over a year ago. So, once again, my question was, should those companies be entering awards, or should the organisers actually be accepting entries from companies of that ilk? Ken Hatcher once again said no, and he said no on the other one as well. Yeah, think of the money spent for these awards and bonuses, etc., but they can't pay out a penny. Legally, they're not required to pay out a penny. Morally, perhaps. And I don't know what money has changed hands. I don't know if there's been any money exchanged between the families of Didcot and Redcar and the companies involved. I honestly don't know the background to that. But it's more a case of, let me put it like this, okay? And I'm going to concentrate on this one because the other one, I've kind of blamed the organisers every bit as much as I blame the companies that have accepted the invitation. So imagine, perish the thought, but imagine you're at work today and unbeknown to you, a child has entered your site on your blind side. You slew your machine round and you whack them on the head with a bucket and they're killed. Worst nightmare, absolute worst nightmare. I'm not entirely sure if some people would ever get back in the cab of a machine having done that, despite the fact that it's not their fault. But having done that, would you 2, 3, 4, 8 years later put yourself forward for the job of a keynote speaker about safety, or put yourself up for an award about safety and well-being? I wouldn't. That's the point. They brought the industry into disrepute. There are different takes on what disrepute means, to my mind. Believe it or not, I've been accused of that. Apparently, I am both a disgrace and I have allegedly brought the demolition industry into disrepute. One thing on that, for a start, I know precisely what I'm doing. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've been threatened with lawsuits 4 times in that career, 3 of them from America. None of them ever went any further than a threat. I have never been sued for libel, slander, defamation, none of that. Now, bearing in mind, I'm a one-man band, and the companies that we're talking about here, and the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, the European Demolition Association, the Institute of Demolition Engineers, they have way more money than I do. So if I had actually brought the industry into disrepute, they could have thrown the book at me and they could have buried me alive. It's never happened. So I don't believe I've ever brought the industry into disrepute, because all I've ever done is report the truth. Like it or lump it, report the truth. But we have companies that have, never mind DIDCAR and REDCAR, there are companies within the NFDC and within the IDE that have had fatalities on their site and they don't even face a temporary suspension. They are required to go along to the NFDC and explain what happens, but that generally takes place after the HSE has done what they do, and after the courts have done what they do as well. But they are not removed, and there's not even an indication. Bearing in mind that the idea of the NFDC website, or the member part of the NFDC website, is to help individuals and companies to find those that are claimed to be competent and accredited demolition contractors. So you go on the NFDC website and you read about all the accreditation and how their members are the elite of the industry, and yet that list that you're presented with makes no mention whatsoever of the fact that individual companies have been involved and prosecuted for fatalities. That's my point. Peter McKenna, I think we're in agreement, because apparently I'm about 1,000 billion% right, or thereabouts. Andy Hare says, questions 1, 2, and 3. None of these companies should be putting themselves out there whilst there remain live investigations. It's a morally bankrupt thing to do. However, it's a big fucking club they pay into. Money talks and backhanders all still work. Yeah. So here's a thought. And I'm spitballing here, so I'm going to throw this one out there and let you be the judges of future justice, okay? So imagine the company that was involved at Redcar goes on to win the CN Award for Health, Safety and Wellbeing, okay? And, I'm absolutely positive they will have put together a very, very good entry. And, and maybe the judges, taking that in isolation, decide, yes, these are the company, we're going to give them an award. And what if in 6 months' time, or whatever it might be, it turns out that they were negligent, or they did have questions to answer on the day that the 2 men were killed up at Redcar? Does Construction News reclaim that award? Do they strip them of the title and give it to somebody else? Should they? We've had, I realise we're talking about very different set of circumstances, but we've had people, Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France, what did he win it, 6, 7 times? But he was stripped of all of them because of being a drug cheat. We've had exactly the same in the Olympics. People have been stripped of their gold medals because they were drug cheats. Would Construction News have the balls to do that? Take away an award that they'd given previously? Because it was subsequently proven that their health and safety award winner was not that healthy or safe. Steve, I do wonder about this. I watch the news daily, partly because of what I do for a living. But, I've always done so. I don't actually take a newspaper anymore. Very rarely read a newspaper these days. But I do wonder if that is actually not a bad idea. You think about all the things that you do have in your own life that you have to worry about. And also, we do live in a time when the most, 99% of the news is pretty dire, pretty downbeat, sad, tragic, terrible. For the sake of your own mental well-being, maybe ditching the news is not such a bad idea. If you hear talk of something that is of interest, you can find that elsewhere. You don't have to go and sit through an hour of news just in the hope that Sky or BBC actually talk to you about it. And also, the skewing. I don't think I've ever been quite so aware of the skewing of news as I am these days. I always knew that, the Guardian, for example, was left-leaning, that the Daily Mail was just to the right of Hitler. I'm aware of all that, but even the TV news now, you just get the impression, you're on that side and you're on that side. Maybe it's not a bad thing to bail out. Yes, very sad news about Jim Balls, founder of JC Balls, passed on peacefully, surrounded by his family. If you're going to go, that's the way to go. He did have a very good innings. I don't know exactly how old he was, but he was certainly getting on in years. But sad day for his family, obviously sad day for all his colleagues and for a good many people in the industry, because he would have been a good friend, confidant and influence, I think, within the industry as well. Let's have a look. Even our very own Prime Minister has to apologise this morning for leaving early from the D-Day celebrations yesterday. Shocking. How poor does your judgment need to be? If you look up my road, this is not the sort of thing that I would do, but if you come out of my house, basically there's only a couple of houses to the right, and it's a dead end. So if you go left from my house, about 4 doors down on the far side of the road, there's a Union Jack flying out there at the moment for D-Day. If you do a right after that, there's 3 other houses down that road that have all got Union Jacks out front for precisely the same reason. There are very few things that unite the nation in the way that honouring the fallen do. Knowing all of that, Rishi Sunak paid a flying visit to the D-Day celebrations before jumping back on a plane at our expense, at enormous environmental expense, so that he could try to salvage his job, even though he's done a piss poor job over the past couple of years. Never mind all of his politics and everything else, surely that above, even setting aside the fact that, on paper, him and his wife are billionaires, even setting that aside, surely that one act alone shows you just how out of touch he is with UK public sentiment. Just saying. Let's have a look. Steve says, we were talking about voluptuous, very blonde, very pouty young ladies working for recruitment companies. Steve Williamson takes offence, sort of. Honestly, I can't believe you said that about LinkedIn. I was just a way to say, why are their profiles so stunning? And you click and it's some recruitment thing. I think it's to attract people, and then they accept the follow. It's pure crap. It is. Who's the mug here? It is the blokes that see attractive females on LinkedIn and immediately hit the follow button. Why? Because here's the other thing. I mean, here's the thing that I do. And if any companies are out there, this is not, I didn't do this particularly at you, I just do this as a rule. Do you get those things where so-and-so has invited you to follow such and such company? I always say no to those. If I wanted to follow that company, I would. I don't need an invitation to follow that company. The reason I don't follow them is my LinkedIn is already busy enough. Do I really, really want it even more full of crap from companies that I barely know? No, I don't. Dan Cullen says, reason that, Mark, is because these women show their face on their profiles, get more attention when jobs are posted. I believe, and more men communicate with them. Yeah, how? How does that work? I don't know if they still do this, but back in my day, they used to do careers evenings. They were a bit of a con, to be perfectly honest, but they did career evenings, and I was told I should go into marketing or advertising or journalism, which, as it turns out, was absolutely right. But if you are, let's say, a 16-year-old girl now, and you're attractive and you're a bit pouty and you're blossoming, shall we say? I'm not going to go any further than that because we are talking about a 16-year-old girl here. If you are blossoming, is the default from the careers advisor, yes, those talents will be welcomed by the recruitment industry? Is that how it works? Is it? If that's the case, shame on all of them. We had both a question and an answer on this. What have you got to do to be removed from the NFTC membership? These companies seem untouchable. Andy Hare then responded, the thing you need to do to get removed, stop paying your subs. Fill in the gaps. Let's have a look. I hate how some people use things like that for attention. Yeah, but there is a difference, isn't there? And I'm aiming this specifically at Steve, but I would say this is a broader thing. There are many different types of people on the internet, but if I am a genuine equipment operator and I have a question about a specific form of work, a particular system, a bit of software, an attachment, I am going and looking for Steve or Ollie Guns or somebody like that. If, however, I'm looking for some cheap titillation that may or may not have an excavator in the background, I'm going in a different direction. I don't think the two actually have any impact on each other. You know, there are people out there that will be paid to say positive things about machines, and we all know who they are, and we can all read between the lines. I've been to Bobcat this week. I've been to Volvo. I went to Volvo last week. No money changed hands. They just invite you along, you go along, you make your own decisions. And you will note, you know, although I'm a fan of Bobcat, I'm a fan of Volvo, a fan of Liebherr and Komatsu and all these companies, all I do is just say, here's their things. Take them at face value. I don't at any point say they are the best. I'm not saying you need to go out and buy one. I'm just saying, here's the thing. You make up your own mind, because frankly, you know it better than I do. So, you know, to my mind, the dancing females in the digger world and the dolly birds in the recruitment world, I don't think they work. You know, if I was starting a demolition or construction company today and I wanted to get the very best people that I could to work alongside me, I'm big enough, ugly enough and old enough to not just go with the chesty blonde. I want somebody that's going to, you know, really get under the skin of what it is I'm trying to achieve and know exactly the type of people I'm trying to attract. It's just a matter of professionalism, which I do think comes up a little bit more in the future. If Rishi really wanted to concentrate on looking good, he should have stayed over there, spent all his time with the remaining veterans, as there's so few left. That would have been morally and politically the right thing to do. Yeah, but when was the last time a politician worried about the morally or the politically right thing to do? Are they not all there basically to feather their own nest and the nest of those among their friends and their cronies? Seems to be. Steve, going back on the dolly bird thing, it's sickening, I think. I don't agree with it at all. Yeah, and listen, I also wonder, 99% of the time, I'm quite a fan of the LinkedIn. I think we get our biggest feedback on Instagram. We get our second biggest feedback on Facebook, but we get our most influential feedback on LinkedIn. And yet, to my mind, LinkedIn is in very serious danger of just descending into being another platform. It was always supposed to be very business focused, and now it feels less so. You know, you have people posting videos of fights in car parks and that kind of thing. And this idea of, I know somebody says a bit later on, I can't see it right now, but somebody, I think it was Chris Ford, said sex sells. Should it? Are we not all grown-ups now? Bearing in mind the enlightened times in which we live, should we really be doing that? It's just beggars belief to my mind. Dan Cullen says, rife now in the industry, tits and legs showing. Yeah, and what has that honestly got to do with recruitment or excavators or skid steer loaders? Nothing. And yeah, well, yes. I don't know if this is true, but 65 quid to get into the Highland show. I know that there are shows. It's not so much here, but you go to certainly the States. Some of the exhibitions, you are paying a big old premium to actually get into them, and some of the tech ones are literally in the thousands of dollars. Now, okay, there's a lot to be had within those exhibitions, but yeah, you've got to be pretty committed if you're going to do that. Let's have a look. There we are. Chris Ford says sex sells. Just imagine what it'd be like if there wasn't regulations. When did you ever see a fat bald bloke or one selling anything on TV apart from the Hamlet advert years ago? Yeah, absolutely right. But and I know I was critical of this idea of tick box advertising, where you've got representatives of all possible races, creeds, colours, inclinations, and everything else. But you see some of the ladies' adverts now for things like what is the stuff that is it a razor or a hair remover? But you've got there's a young girl with Down syndrome is in the advert. There's a lady that's got I can't remember the name of the condition. Vitiligo, is it called? That Michael Jackson had, where you end up with partial, I think the lady is coloured, but she's got some white blotches on her and all that sort of thing. So on the one hand, we're trying to be representative of all women, and yet here in construction, it's dolly birds, tits and arse. Time we all grew up a bit, I think. Mick says, have you ever thought about removing the Demolition from your program title? Well, it's not really in the program title, is it? I mean, the show is called The Breakfast Show, and obviously it was a play on breakfast, and you break stuff in Demolition. That was always the idea. But yeah, I mean, listen, we've done an awful lot this morning on Demolition. We don't always, but there's a lot of Demolition equipment featured. That's still my love. I still run Demolition News. I still run Demolition Insider. So that's where my love lies. Fred tends to take care of all things diggers-wise, and we just bring it all together for the show. So yes, despite all that I've said earlier, still very much committed to the Demolition cause. Steve says he's looking into a sex change to get followers. You already wear a kilt, Steve. That's plenty far enough for my mind. He also says, Katie Callagher and the JCB Digger Girl are the best examples in the UK of women in the industry. I agree. And I've already said, that they have one thing in common. They keep their clothes on. I'm a fan of that. There's another point to this. My children are too old. But if I were a father of, let's say, maybe a 12 or a 13-year-old girl, and maybe I've had some exposure to the demolition industry and the construction industry, and I'm very keen for my daughter to follow me into that line of work, who am I going to point her towards? That expression, you can't be what you can't see. So if I'm looking for a role model for my 12, 13-year-old daughter coming into demolition or construction, where am I going to point her? Am I going to point her at somebody like Katie Callagher, who travels the world talking about her experience? Yes, she's a bit gall-blimey, but I love her for it. But she's an advocate for the industry, very, very eloquent, doesn't play on her femininity. Listen, she has the pink hair from time to time. She has the fancy nails and everything else. But she's not, look at me. No, none of that whatsoever. am I going to point my 12 or 13-year-old daughter to her, or am I going to point her at somebody dancing scantily in front of a digger? Do I really want that for my daughter? I don't think I do. And I wonder how many of the men, and we all know who they are, how many of the men that are commenting on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all these platforms, they are commenting in a vaguely sexual way about the appearance of these women, be they excavator influencers or recruitment people. I wonder how many of those have got daughters at home. I wonder how proud their daughters might be to see their father drooling over some person they've never met. Just saying. All I've seen on the Digger Girls post was pervs commenting on her looks rather than the job she's doing. Yeah. Now, there is a point here. That is not her problem. I've met the Digger Girl. She's lovely. She really is lovely. Couldn't be a nicer person if she tried. She's absolutely lovely. And maybe, just maybe, she has taken the decision to encourage that kind of thing because it does gather lots of views, and lots of views means that other manufacturers will want to work with her. Maybe they're not looking closely enough at exactly what those views entail, in other words, some of the sexist comments that she gets, and maybe all is right with that. Maybe she has decided, if that's what we're going to get, that's what we're going to get. I'm going to roll with it. In which case, good luck to her. Good luck to her. She has my undivided backing on that. But is that right from an industry problem? Is that right from an industry point of view? Is that right from a manufacturer's point of view? How is that any different to advertising your equipment with, rather than an operator with his safety glasses, his hard hat, his high vis? Let's just stick a girl in there with a bikini on, or less. Why don't we do that? If that's the game you want to play, why not just go the whole hog? Yep, not her problem, says Dan. She's a great talkative lady. Met her a few times. Yeah, as I say, she's absolutely smashing. Wouldn't have. I mean, seriously, if I were at Bauma or Conexpo or Intermat or whatever, and I was alongside her and somebody said some of the things they say to her online in person, I'd know about it. Maybe that is why she's doing it. Is why I stopped following her in some of these women operators. Yeah. I listen. I've stopped following virtually all of these social media influencers, mainly because I don't need to know what they're doing. They don't do what I do. We just operate in different spheres. So I don't watch them, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if they don't watch me, because, frankly, why would they? We operate in very, very different spheres. My concern is more a case of, what does that say about the industry? And I realise we are a very, very male-dominated industry, and will be for years to come yet. But is that really bearing in mind all the strides that we've made? We are up to about 15% representation of females in the industry. All the steps we've made on health and safety and mental health. And I don't think any of those battles are won, but we're making these giant strides in trying to make the industry better. And to my mind, that kind of thing is just a step backwards. Chris Ford says influencer is a modern PR advertising person, just in a different set of clothes, or not in clothes, as the case may be. But that's not. There was one very, very famous one. Well, infamous, should I say. There's a guy who used to do some PR, and that was part of his shtick, get himself the dolly bird to go and schmooze with the clients and stuff like that. But everyone could see that for what it was, and I don't honestly think that anybody ever fell for it and saw beyond exactly what it was. Whereas, when you're talking about PR, I was in PR for 10 years, I've not worn a bikini in quite some time. Look at me, As for men, they spend the first 9 months of their life trying to get out of a fanny, the rest of their lives trying to get back in. Fair comment. As my father once said about one of my early relationships, for the first 6 months, you'll wish you could eat it. For the rest of your life, you'll wish you had. He said that. He said that to a 16-year-old. Thanks, Dad. Chris Ford, rule number 1 in crushing. You can't crush wet shit. Rule number 2, don't put it in the crusher. Fair comment. Dan Cullen says, Mark, yourself and Fred do an amazing job. Thank you very much indeed. And think about this, right? And you're all working for different companies. Do you find yourself swinging by a rival company on your way to work to see how they're operating, what machines they're operating? You may be aware, but are you really keeping an eye on that? Are you aware of the latest machine they've bought, or the latest attachment, or whatever it might be? Who cares? You do you. Just if you turn up and do your job to the best of your ability, look after the machine, look after the company that employs you, all of that will look after you, and you'll be absolutely dandy. No matter what you do in life, there's always someone who wants your money. Yeah, mainly my wife, I find. The bird with the pigmentation condition is bang on. Yeah, bang on. Feels good heading home early on a Friday. Why not work 12 hours Monday, Thursday and finish early on Friday? Will make sense, more effective. I'd much rather just work weekends and have the rest of the week off, to be honest. Mick Norton, reference young Sunak. I can hear my late dad saying, I wouldn't take him prisoner, nor would I. Can you imagine having that around you? And just the weird thing is, what's the alternative? Obviously the alternative is Keir Starmer, but really, when you look at all of the politicians at the moment, on one hand you've got Rishi Sunak and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who frankly don't even live in the same realm as I, as myself and the rest of you. But Keir Starmer, is he any better? Are any of them? Would you? I'd like to think that all, bearing in mind, we spend a lot of time together. If we found ourselves in a local Starbucks or a local pub, I'd like to think that the way we get on here would be continued there. We'd have our banter, we'd wind each other up, we'd have common ground. We'd have our disagreements and our arguments, but we're all of one mind. If, however, you stirred Starmer or Sunak into that mix, how do you think that conversation would be? I think I'd be sat there thinking, well, these guys and me have nothing in common whatsoever, at all. Then you get some of these women wearing a highlight and helmet and never been on a site. Yeah. Be professional and not tacky. I think that's aimed at the ladies that are being exploited in the industry. However, it may well be aimed at me. If it is, I'll try my best next week. Steve says, it's normally like a garage door company or someone selling blinds. The sexualization of the industry. I think that's the bit that frustrates me the most. I think that's the bit that upsets me the most. The fact that we're not... I left full-time magazine journalism, well, for another publisher. I did it myself, but I quit that in 1990. And during my time at Contract Journal and at Plant Managers Journal, we had already banned any form of sexualized advertising. There was a time back in the late 80s, early 90s, where a lot of the power tool companies were very, very bad for this. You know, they rather than showing you a drill or an angle grinder or something like that, there you've got the girl in the bikini. You know, oh, look at this. It's like a bit like a Bond movie poster. We banned it. You send us one of those ads, we're sending it back. There is no way we're running that. Now, that was 87, 88, 89. So what are you talking about? 40 plus years ago? And yet here we are, the advent of social media and everything else, and we've basically just gone, let's take a step back and let's get the tits on the adverts again. What in God's name? Honestly, pisses me off. People complain about flying you a country flag if they're from another country. It's not just that. I mean, there's a bit of me that kind of understands it, because I don't think the Union Jack flag has actually been hijacked, but I do think there are a lot of people that think that the Union Jack, and I mean this on both sides, either as a non-British person, but also some elements of the British population, see the Union Jack as some kind of nationalist symbol, you know, almost like a right-wing symbol. It was never meant to be. It never has been. It never will be. But I can certainly see that some people would see that. Too many news clips get cropped through the day to misquote and hype up what someone said. Cropping someone's quote should be against the law. Yeah, I agree. We do live in the age of the soundbite, don't we? And I do think that partly to blame is the fact that but back in the day, there is a very famous case, and I think it goes back to like the 1950s. Somebody came on the TV in Britain and said, "Good evening, there is no news." And that was the end of the news. That's a real thing. That actually happened. The problem we've got now is that we've got a 24-hour rolling news, be it from Sky or BBC or ITV or in America, you know, CNN and MSNBC and stuff like that. So you've got this rolling program. They have to fill it with something. And everything becomes highly sensationalized. You know, I'm not defending Rishi Sunak, but he may have spoken for 20 minutes, but they take 30 seconds out of that, completely out of context, and make him sound either really, really good or more often really, really bad. When if you actually listen to the entire thing, it's like, yeah, he's got a point, or maybe not. But they take things out of context and twist it as they see fit. Chris Ford having a first for lunch today. Battered chips. That will boost the cholesterol. Battered chips, how does that work? I'm doing the maths. I know exactly how it works. So instead of battering fish, they lob the chips in there and then they deep fry them. Chris, I need a report. I need to know if battered chips are worth seeking out, because they sound right up my street. Ken, do you work for JC Balls? I don't think he does. I can't remember the name of the company he works for, but I don't think it's them. Dan Cullen says, I don't watch much news. It'd be full of BS. It used to be different. Now it's all full of sadness and no positivity. Yeah, well, again, because it's rolling, we don't even seem to get that. What I remember Trevor McDonald always used to do, and finally, and there was, you know, cat being rescued from a tree, or, you know, something to make you feel good before you left the news. You know, there's war and there's famine and there's feast and it's all horrible. But look at the cute cat getting rescued from the tree. Have a good night, and you go away with kind of a warm feeling. I don't think we bother with that anymore. It's death, destruction. Yeah. Chris Wall says, sounds a bit like card screen for operators. If you've got a card, you're now accredited as a qualified operator. My arse. Just the same for companies. You're accredited, you've got the contract. Yeah. And let me just take that a little bit further. Imagine if your accreditation was earned having had your project visited and you knew the visit was going to happen. When and where? How much is that accreditation worth if you know exactly when the adjudicator is coming to check you over? I mean, my office at the moment, because I've been away and I've come back and I've jumped straight into the show, my office at the moment is a bit of a state. I've got bits and pieces on my desk, I've got bits and pieces behind me, I've got a half unpacked suitcase behind me, and so on down the line. If I knew I had an adjudicator popping by later this afternoon, this office would look very, very different indeed. Do you not think the same rules apply? Let's have a look. Not alone for women dressing appropriately for a construction agency. Also, some ladies, truck operators are the same. Are they? Not a bit of the world I really get involved in. Mick Norton says, Construction News Awards will be well aware if any company was spending any prosecution outcome. Surely they would be on the award application. Are they? Are they? We have a system in the UK, the pre-qualification questionnaire. I'm sure you're all aware of it. So you fill in a form before you're even allowed on a tender list. So even before you know precisely what the job is, if you want to work for X contractor or X local authority, you need to fill out a pre-qualification questionnaire, and it gives details of, you know, who you are, where you are, what you do, and everything else. And they ask things like your VAT number, the details of the insurance that you have, and so on down the line. They also ask, have you been involved in any form of corruption or collusion? That is a question on most, if not all, of these PQQs these days. And yet, the companies that were found guilty of that just over a year ago, corruption and collusion, are winning work right, left and centre as we speak. You know, that is still fresh in the memory of most in the industry. If a major contractor cared to actually check the internet, they would find reference to all of the companies that were involved in that, and yet somehow they're winning work. So are they lying when they fill out their PQQ? No, collusion, perish the thought, never being involved in that. Are they lying? Or are they being honest and the major contractors are going, I'll be fine, no one will ever know? Not sure which way it is, but it's one of those. These awards usually just seem to be run and won by firms that all pay into the same clique. Just an excuse for a piss up and an arse-licking section. An award given from a public vote would be a bit more noteworthy. The funny thing is that the CN Awards, I've been involved, not directly, but I've worked for companies to help prepare their entries for the CN Awards, and the CN Awards are so intense. I mean, you get a. I'm trying to do this without swearing, but you get a fucking grilling. I mean, they properly give you a grilling, and yet 3 of the 6 companies in the Demolition Awards category were among the CMA 10, and one of the companies that's up for an award for health and safety had a double fatality on one of its sites. And I will stress, I keep stressing this because I don't want to get a solicitor's letter, I will stress that the investigations are ongoing, which should be enough to disbar them anyway, but the investigations are ongoing and there is no evidence to suggest that either the person that is taking the keynote speaker position at the World Demolition Awards or the company that is up for the Health and Safety Award within Construction News, there's no suggestion whatsoever that they were negligent or that they are guilty. But the investigations remain ongoing, so therefore, to my mind, they should be disbarred. That's a whole other story. Chris Ford, our question of the day actually was about job interviews. I gave you mine. It did occur to me, actually, that not everybody here will have had a formal job interview. And there's Chris Ford. And I know somebody else said exactly the same. I think it may have been Jim Turner. He never had a formal job interview. What have I missed? You haven't missed much at all. You go in, you mind your P's and Q's, and hopefully they give you the nod. Although on one occasion, when I first started working for Construction News, I was invited by a former colleague to go for the interview. And literally, this is absolutely true. I didn't even know that the interview had started. I was invited to go to an office I was in the same publishing company, invited to go to an office to meet up with my old colleague and his boss. And we sat there for about an hour, just chewing the fat and chatting about the world and everything else. And I was sat there thinking, I wonder when the interview's going to start. And in the end, the main man, the boss, actually said, well, we'd like to offer you the job. Apparently, that was it. Well, you all know what a winning personality I have. A Saturday show. Now, Dan Cullen, update on Saturday show. Normally we do second Saturday. But as I've pointed out, my wife is going away. She goes away on Wednesday next week. I think she goes away on the 14th, if that... Is it the 12th? Can't remember. She goes away on the 12th. So, not this Saturday, like not tomorrow, but next Saturday. If you fancy a chinwag, I'll be doing it. I will be doing it. So please join me if you can. Demo Force and Statum Group are going for weeks now. Yes, they have been, and it was obvious that there were some links between Demo Force and both Statum Group, but more specifically Rye Demolition, because Simon Barlow's son actually was with Demo Force literally from day one, and I'd been tipped the week that Simon was beavering away in the background, but they declared it official this morning, so that was why we updated the news. Yes, I think that probably covers everything. I know somebody did. I think it was Jim. Yes, there we are. That was the one that I missed. Question of the day. No particular one, as I don't really bother with job interviews as such. I just ring around for the start. But people's faces when I see them, when I've been for an interview and been given the job, but I've turned them down and said job wasn't good enough. I think they thought it was a one-way street, and I should be grateful that they'd given it me. Yeah. I do remember, funnily enough, it was the same interview, the one I've just told you about over at Contract Journal. One of the questions that I was asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was sat opposite the editor of the magazine, and I just literally pointed to his chair. They laughed. Apparently they thought I was joking. I wasn't. Never did get the chair, but you get the idea. There's another one. Question of the day. I had no interview, but glad few people see what I'm capable of the job and get it. Yeah. Ashley, let me know what they're doing. That they were joining forces. Yeah, absolutely right. How can she train operators when she's literally new in the industry? I don't. Sorry, I've done these out of order. My apologies. Let me go here. Talking about Carl to Girl, was on an excavator for 1.5 years, and now she's a trainer. How does that work? She has no real construction experience. Yep. So whoever has appointed her trainer, you have to question the validity of that. But also, what is the reaction? I've told you this story before, but I'll tell you again because it's kind of allied. When my wife gave birth to our first daughter, we had a midwife visit my wife and I, but mainly my wife, at home, I don't know, a week after she got out of hospital. And she started by, how's things going? How's the baby feeding? Blah, 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 blah. But then she got very, very... dictatorial. You must do this, you must do that, you must, to the point where you know what an easygoing kind of laid back guy I am. And I went, hang on a minute, love. How many children have you actually got? And she said, well, none. So I threw her out. Not my proudest moment, but I threw a midwife out because it was obvious that she didn't have the actual experience. She had bits of paper that said she had the experience, but she didn't. If I'm a hairy-ass digger driver and I turn up for training and I'm being told by somebody, never mind the fact that she's a different gender, never mind her actual age, but if I turn up and I get the slightest inkling that actually I've been doing this job longer than they have, that's me done. It's like somebody listen, it happens. You imagine somebody starting a digger magazine tomorrow and then ringing me up and saying, "Hi, Mark, just watched your show. You know you're doing it all wrong, don't you?" Fuck off. You don't know anything. Behave yourselves. Let's have a look. Great show, Mark, says Dan Cullen, and a great chat. Thank you very much indeed. How can you support and work with the CITB when they post things that you'd get chucked off site for, or injure or destroy something or someone? Yeah, I'm an ambassador for the Construction Industry Training Board. Look at me operating a machine with my dog on my lap. Really? The old adage, them that can do, those that can't teach, or make them a manager. There's an extension to that, by the way. Good morning to, and I do mean good morning, very early in the morning. Good morning to Encon USA, all the way from the USA, from the mighty Encon. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, whatever you choose to be. Good morning. Good to see you here. There is an extension to that old adage. Those are them that can do, those that can't teach, and those that really can't, write and talk about it. Let's have a look. Mick Norton says, I attended an interview panel at Askham Bryan College of Agriculture for a health and safety post in 1994. Panel chair asked me, have you any objection to the lady at the back of the room taking notes? No objection. I didn't get the post, but found out later that the lady at the back taking notes was the CEO checking for body language of yours truly. Holy Mother of God. Dear Lord. Checking body language. I think my body language would be a dead giveaway, to be perfectly honest. Jesus, it's past 12 o'clock. It is. We've been going for 2 hours, people. Enough already. Please, go. Try to ignore people with too much makeup on LinkedIn. Please do stay safe. Have a good weekend. Look more carefully at who is winning awards and why. Consider very carefully those that direct the industry and whether they should be. While you're doing that, I'm going to take my wife for a cup of coffee. And by the way, as Steve says, try not to watch the news, because the news will make you feel bad. Instead of watching the news, go back and watch a previous episode. Watch this episode of The Breakfast Show. Go away feeling better about the world. Maybe. Yes, 2 hours, I know. Removing my hippie bow before the next LinkedIn post. A lot of women have no confidence without makeup. I'm the same. I am the same. If only you knew what lurked beneath the... I was going to try and convince you I was wearing makeup, but I couldn't remember the name. It's foundation, isn't it? Yes. I've worn foundation only on telly, promise. And the occasional weekend. And sometimes on a night out. But that's a whole other story. Enjoy your weekend, guys, says Dan Cullen. That's a fine note to end on. Everybody, go have a fantastic time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'll see you on Monday for more of this. Hopefully, we'll be able to deliver it all in rather less than 2 hours. No promises, though. See you then, everybody. Have a fantastic day. All the best.